Hello and welcome to the Brave Marketing Podcast with your host, Swapna Thomas. This is the podcast for the renegades, the trailblazing leaders, and the change makers who don't just have a business, it's your calling. Those of you who want to make a difference and make money, but all on your own terms. I'm on a mission to show as many life coaches as possible how you can have more income, more impact, and infinitely more fun by being unapologetically and bravely you and breaking all the rules. I have created 5-figure months with no paid ads, a tiny list, and zero complicated sales funnels. Simplifying marketing and teaching you how to use it for good in the world is my zone of genius. With this podcast, I'm here to share weekly episodes on the soul and the strategy of marketing, mindset, money, and everything online business. Let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Brave Marketing Podcast. And today's episode is going to be really meta because we have a podcasting queen talking about podcasting on this podcast. So we are talking to Olivia de Sousa. She is a multi-talented entrepreneur with a deep passion for helping others achieve their business goals without succumbing to the common pitfalls of social media burnout, which is so real. I can vouch for it. And she's also known fondly as Livvi, and she empowers entrepreneurs by guiding them in the creation of binge-worthy podcasts with ease. With Livvi's assistance, entrepreneurs don't just create engaging podcasts, they establish a solid foundation for their entire marketing footprint, from videos to social media posts. And her innovative approach has helped her clients reclaim up to 6 hours every week, which I can tell you are priceless for any entrepreneur. And that also prevents burnout and enhances productivity. Through her love for podcasting, Livvi has had the opportunity to collaborate with a diverse group of professionals, from coaches and educators to social workers and radio stations. And many of her clients have gone on to land radio gigs, speaking engagements, and hot leads, amplifying their reach and impact. So welcome, Livvi. I'm going to call you Livvi because I love that people call you Livvi fondly.
My brother started it. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah. And obviously, that last part that you talked about, that your clients have gone to land radio gigs and speaking engagement, that means you do help them get famous. But what I am more interested in is this one thing that you mentioned, that you were famous in Portugal for 15 minutes. So I really want to start the whole episode by talking about that. Such an intriguing thing.
Yes, that was a fun adventure. And if I'd been willing to uproot my family, who knows what might have happened. But no, this entertainer who's very famous in Portugal. So if there's any Portuguese, they will know this person. It's King Barreiros. And he is he's very famous. And he's across generations because he sings funny songs that to the kids sound innocent and to the adults have a double meaning and are kind of a little bit naughty. And so he came out to Australia and he came to Melbourne, and I was a support act. And he liked what he heard, and we got chatting, and he said that if I went to Portugal, he'd help get me on some TV shows and open some doors. And he was true to his word. So I went with my family and we went up and down north and south of Portugal, and, even got to stay in a penthouse suite at some place thanks to him. But my family, when I tell this story, I think that people, might think other things were going on, but my parents were around the whole time. He was like he felt like an uncle to me, and it was fun. So yeah, I got on 4 different very famous TV shows in Portugal that go all around the world, and for a red hot minute I was a bit famous and being recognised. But I would have, and I could have potentially stayed there, but I didn't really want to I just got married, didn't want to make my husband have to learn Portuguese and I just didn't want to change my whole life to live there. But that was a fun adventure, Yeah, so that was funny. That was fun.
Yeah. So that was your first brush with fame, I suppose.
Yeah, so
And
that's my, I get to put that in my bio.
yeah, and now you help others get famous. And of course, you are famous in your own right as well. The other thing that I saw when I was going through, what you shared in the form that we have for all our guests, we ask this question: what has been the bravest thing that you have done in your life or in your business? And you shared that it was being able to talk openly about things that you had been processing for a while and now you felt ready. And specifically, you were talking about postnatal depression and also having a baby via a donor egg. And I now know that you also talk about ADHD, which I think you are also processing and sort of sharing at the same time. I just wanted to say that I think this is very common across all forms of content, not just podcasting, but speaking about things openly, sharing your real opinions and truths, being bold and showing up with that, big deal energy, and yet being vulnerable is how you really connect to your audience. So when you have clients start their podcasts, do you see this evolution where they start from being really scripted to becoming more real? And what would you say to someone who has just started a podcast and is finding it a little bit difficult to be really themselves, or really openly talk about things that they have been wanting to talk about for a while?
I think you have to start to get comfortable, you have to start. And you will become more confident just by doing that. But even then, you can hit some ups and downs where especially if you're doing a solo podcast, for example, you might be just talking to a microphone and go, is this any good? Is this interesting? I'm boring myself here or whatever. So I think it is also helpful to have someone to talk to, and that's something I provide. But whether it's someone that helps you, like a podcasting mentor, or whether it's just someone you've got in your life, a business mentor or someone you can speak to, sometimes we need to get out of our own heads. So I think that's another thing that works. And the other part about being honest and open is that I think that you can only do that when you have processed it and wrapped your head around it and you're ready to. Because those things that I've said that I've talked about myself, I've done that when I'm able to. And there's times where I felt like, for example, with my pregnancy and people with Cara that I had when I threw a donor egg, I had to go through a whole processing of it. Is it okay to be an older mum and to be trying to get pregnant, and is it okay to get a donor egg? And I had to go through all of this, and I had to feel okay before I could share it. And I was just listening to a podcast the other day, actually, while we're on this topic, where they were talking about, someone was saying that they lost weight through a gastric band, and she's saying, I'm being honest about it because I see other celebrities not being honest, and it's not right and all of that. And my take on it is that you can't demand people to share things until they've processed it and it's ready. And it might be a really triggering thing that they can't and aren't ready to talk about. But also keep in mind, this might be going on a tangent too a little bit, but so that also is a reminder that when you watch other people and you compare yourself to other people, that you may not know the whole story, and to give yourself grace and to give other people grace. But as soon as you can work through issues and understand them and be comfortable with them, that's when you can start to share them.
I am a very big believer in the fact that you don't owe vulnerability to anyone. Just because you have a business or you have a platform, that doesn't mean that you have to talk about each and every part of your life. I'm a very private person, and I definitely don't share all of my stories. And even the ones that I share, I have processed for a while. And I always love to say, I feel like I'm a broken record when I say this, but you should share your scars, not your wounds. And it's not just for your own, sort of protection and safety, but I think also not, if you are in the thick of it, right? If you haven't fully processed it, you might not be able to have a meaningful conversation with anyone. If you sort of bring that topic up, then you have to be open for conversation as well, because people might ask questions, they might have feedback. And if you haven't fully processed it, people can sort of re-trigger your trauma, so to say. So I feel like you should do it at your own time, in your own way as well. Like, you don't have to share each and every nitty gritty of it. You can keep it as general as you want to, or go as deep as you want to. So I'm fully in agreement with you there. But I also feel like it's such an amazing thing that you have come to a place where you are able to share these things. And I'm sure it helps so many other women who are wanting to be an older mom, or who have had PND. I was one of them. So great to just know your own process around that. Let's come back to podcasting, because that's what you are amazing at. Podcasting has been such a joyful thing for me to include in my business, because I really wanted to create long form content. And I know that's a little bit of a, weird thing to say right now, because everything is about short form content, right? Everyone wants to create reels, and everyone wants to create now threads and all those things.
Oh
And
no, it's another platform.
yeah, but I really love long form content. I am still the kind of person who watches YouTube videos which are like 40, 50 minute, long, or I love listening to podcasts which might be 1.5 hours long. And I, of course, listen to it on 1.5x speed, because that's what people with ADHD do. But what I have realized is that it has a learning curve like any other medium, right? It's fun, and you can totally do it on your own terms, but it definitely has a steep learning curve as well. What are some things that people don't realize or don't really plan for before starting their podcast, and you sort of see them really struggling with when they come and start working with you?
I think, I think the tech gets people. It just all seems overwhelming, and and just the thought of the commitment, or just getting into it and not planning ahead a bit, because I always advise people to have preferably, say, 2 months recorded before you start, at least 1 month, but I like 2 months, a bit of a buffer, so that, because you can batch record, and then by the time you make a big song and dance and have your launch, like you had a wonderful launch. I love how you did yours. But, you can do it with a bit of, and be relaxed, a bit of peace and comfort, and knowing that they're going to keep going out every week, or whatever frequency you're going with. And that you're not just suddenly finding, how time is. The week flies by and you go, oh my God, I'm supposed to have a podcast out tomorrow, and scrambling.
You can say that. You can say that again. Time literally flies when you have clients and you have a business and content to create on other platforms as well. So yeah, absolutely agree.
So that's, I think it's just facing it, actually, too, a big part. I think a lot of the things that we fear, whether it's in podcasting or any part of life, it's just staying stuck in thinking about it. And when you actually face it and go, okay, so what do I need to start a podcast, and actually bite the bullet and look into it and start dealing with it, it's a lot less scary than being just frozen in fear and overwhelm about it. Just start dealing with it. And even if you make mistakes, I mean, the reason I'm able to help people today, and some of the most valuable ways that I can help people, are due to making mistakes along the way. So just embrace it. Don't put the pressure on yourself to be perfect.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? I always encourage my clients to go for C minus content. Like, don't go for A plus content, because you're just going to exhaust yourself. And it's through the C minus content that you're going to get to the A plus content, honestly. And it's the same with podcasting. I think with podcasting, because it feels like, and there has been historically, big podcasts that we have seen, the ones that have a lot of popularity, they're such a production, like there's so much of produced stuff behind it. So it sort of puts this pressure on you to be like them, to be as professional as them, as planned out as them, and as polished as them. But I think everyone has to understand that your podcast is basically your platform, and you get to run it like you want to. So if you want to, really just shoot the breeze with your audience for a while. Every episode you can do that. Or if you're like me, who just loves to get into it immediately, I don't like to, create a lot of intro drama or anything like that, you can do that as well. So I think what I'm taking away from what you've shared is to just really make it your own journey, and batching is for sure preferable. I am still not in that groove. I am still finding my feet with that. Like, we are still a couple of weeks ahead only, most of the time. But yeah, that is definitely something, because I fell sick, really sick, couple of months ago, and it kind of threw everything off track when it came to podcasting. So creating short form content on social media platforms was easy, but something like this does take a little bit of planning and a little bit of preparation as well. So I think, yeah, I completely agree with you. Batching is something that everyone should consider, and having a bank of episodes so that they can still go out if you are not well or you have life happen to you.
Yes. Well, the other thing you can do too that I've done sometimes for clients is go through the archives of some course they've delivered or something and go, here's a sneak peek of a course that I did, and just then only record an intro and put that out and give people a bit of a taste of what it's like to work with you. But there's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. So I think I do like to do batching because for me and for most people that I work with, they feel more relaxed, I guess, and more confident if they know they've got a few in there. But there's other ways to do it. Like, for example, if you have a weekly interview that you do with someone and you just know that you're going to turn that into a podcast and you might do it live, then it might be once a week and it might not be a batch situation. So there's no rules too. So I can share what I know works for a lot of people and what most people find helpful, but I also think there's best practice and then there's life and what you can do. And sometimes I think we need to take a bit of pressure off ourselves. I think, best practice is to be every day, at the same time, weekly, ideally, but fortnightly. But I think what is manageable, and even if you miss one, like the sky, it's better if people can expect it. It's better if you're consistent. Of course, that's what we aim for. If something happens, sometimes I feel like that can be an excuse for people going, I failed, and throw it all in. And there's no someone from the sky is going to come down and say, like, you missed that week. You just don't want to get into a habit of letting it, and letting you come to a complete stop. But take the pressure off. There's no rules.
Oh, I love that. I'm a complete rule breaker, so I love that you believe that as well. But one of the things that you just shared now completely segues into what I wanted to ask you. You mentioned sharing content from the archives of your old courses. So one of the things that I am now starting to think of is how to repurpose my podcast, because I definitely don't want to create content for the sake of content. And I always want to be strategic and leverage it in the long run. So what are some effective strategies for repurposing podcast content across multiple platforms? Because I know you're such a genius at it.
All right. Well, one of the big ways I do it is with video. So that would include having video on. And I know you don't, so have video in your podcast. So I also do acknowledge that backing yourself with however you go about it is a big thing. Whatever you do, do it with 100% positive energy and excitement for the way you're going about it. You do what's right for you. But a video is a big way that I do it, because for me personally, I feel like if I'm recording something and I'm spending this amount of time, on one hand, I'm loving that I'm here at the moment. I can be in my comfortable, big, warm, fluffy coat without caring what it looks like, and I haven't bothered having to attach my webcam and all of that. So doing it just audio is lovely. It takes the pressure off in some ways. But if you don't mind putting a camera on, then that gives you a whole bunch of other opportunities. So you can, like, for example, YouTube, they're actually pushing podcasts now as an official with an RSS feed and all of that. So you could put it on YouTube. You can, even if you don't do the YouTube long form, you can still chop up your video into shorts and get them edited too. So you can do one piece of content, which is your podcast, then you've got a bunch of shorts and TikToks and reels that can push out onto all the platforms. And then you get a transcript from your podcast. And that's one thing I loved, even before like short form videos were cool and everything, is just the fact that you get this treasure trove of stuff that you said. It's basically you get to brain dump, right? And then you get to go through and do some gold digging, I guess, and pull out the nuggets. So you can have quotes, you can tidy up what you said into a blog, you can create carousels from some of the stuff that you said, you can put it into an email. So you're doing one activity and it can feed everything else. Usually there'll be a pull-out quote and something that you can put on social media or something. So yeah, it's just where you get to go deep. And when you go deep, there's lots that you can dig out of that.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of your creativity and having the right support as well. Like with someone like you on their side, I think people can really pull out so many different ways of using the same piece of content. I feel, yeah, definitely having a, video content would be amazing. But trust me, like it's almost it's 6 a.m. here. You don't want to see me on a video right now. And usually when I'm recording podcasts, it's either early morning or it's either late night because of, where I live and all of that stuff. So I had to, like, it wasn't a choice, but I had to choose no video option. But I feel also like you're just limited by your own imagination. Like you could literally take the audio and put some sort of, a background on it and still use it on YouTube as a podcast, because I've seen those as well. Because I think even on YouTube, like at least for me, I only listen to videos. I very rarely actually sit and watch a video. I usually am doing something while I'm listening to a video and, just absorbing the stuff. So I think you can still literally do anything that you want to do with the podcast because it is long form content. And that is the beauty of it. Like you can literally break it into so many different ways. And I encourage everyone to have something which is long form content. It used to be vlogs, and I was, I started with a blog. So I definitely love that era, but it is not no longer that era anymore. So we have options like videos or podcasts, or that's pretty much it, right? You can either have videos or you can have audio, but you should have some sort of long form content in your business for sure. The other thing I want to talk to you about is that last week, Threads was introduced, and it was like an earthquake in the online world. And we saw it dip across all the platforms when it came to engagement, right? Everyone just immediately was sucked into this bright, shiny new platform. And I could see so many people complain that I had a launch going on this week and now the engagement is completely dead on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And almost every other day, we also hear or see someone who has lost their social media account or has been shadow banned or has been restricted for using some words or sharing some specific information, right? In what ways does podcasting help to insulate businesses from the impacts of social media algorithm changes or just platform bans?
Well, I think for one thing that you get to keep your podcast, like it's a safer, more secure platform that you own, that you can then put on all the platforms. So what we were talking about before with the repurposing, for myself, when they started talking about TikTok bans, and I'd been following people on TikTok and my heart was kind of breaking, thinking, some of these people put in like 4 or 5 videos a day just to make that impact to get where they are, and it could just be taken away from them or
yeah, it happened. Like in India, TikTok is banned.
Yes.
You cannot access it.
That is so unfair to all the people that have created their leads from there. And so, like, we all know people that have had their accounts banned on Meta, on one platform, or on Instagram or Facebook. And so to me, having a podcast, chopping up all the little videos, if you're going to do videos, or just do them as audiograms or your B-roll or whatever, and using that and spreading it. I like the idea of diversifying and putting it across different places and sending them and directing people to your email list that you do own. But basically, if you own a podcast, you'll be able to own that. You can switch to different hosts if you wish to, but basically you get to own that. Always back it up, of course, but it's a thing that you get to keep. And I think we should build our own real estate. We're putting all this work into creating content. It's best if we can own it and spread your risk too.
Yeah, and I think again, like I would once again reiterate like the importance of having long form content in your business. It's literally not just long form, it's also long term because you can keep reusing it in so many different ways, chop it up or just, get re-inspired and create even more content with your podcast. So for sure, I definitely feel like that is something everyone should think about. As someone who is helping with so many podcasts and helping so many entrepreneurs bring out their podcast, and obviously you have your ear on the ground, you are observing what's happening in the podcasting world. What do you think is the forecast for podcasters? What should people expect from their own podcasts? Any trends you have spotted or any specific strategy you would recommend trying for anyone who's listening?
As you said, you don't necessarily need to go for the next shiny object, just simply to create good quality content and concentrate on your own game. But the newest thing, I guess, would be YouTube moving into the space, probably the newest development that I've seen happening, that they actually are creating an RSS feed. And I did hear whispers that, they could be a place that you potentially host from. It was Pat Flynn. I saw a video of him. I don't know if the Smart Passive Income.
Yeah, OG podcaster.
He was talking about that, but it was all very new. So we have to wait and see. But that would be quite a disruptive move. So that'd be interesting. But it's obviously quite a competitive space with YouTube and Spotify and Apple all trying to get attention. So that means it's not going anywhere. So so YouTube is a possibility with that. But whether you do low-key version YouTube and just have a presence there versus I'm going to try and go viral on YouTube, they're two very different things. So one is, push it out there very basic, like with an audiogram, and you can set it up with repurpose.io or something. Or if you go, I'm going to go viral type of content, then you actually do need to do the more edited, polished version for that. Generally is usually how YouTube actually works. So it's just got to pick what works for you, your lifestyle, your business, your goals. Yeah.
And I think I would be remiss if I don't talk about AI. Do you think AI is going to have any impact on podcasting?
It gets into everything, doesn't it? I mean, I'm already using it, to be honest. I actually have a download people can have if they want, and add some of the ways that I use it to help with creating the podcast titles and helping with show notes and suggesting the tags to put in it, things like that. So you can already do that there, but it comes into ways things are edited and the video side of things. It's just endless, but even more scarily, but I can't imagine this being an enjoyable thing to listen to. But it is possible to take a transcript, write a script and give it to an AI who's cloned your voice and get an AI actually does all the speaking, but that would lack personality, surely. I think the strength that we have at the moment is being more human and having some flaws and showing up and having conversations, and the flaws are actually part of the value because we know it's real then. So that side of that doesn't appeal to me so much. The automated voice just saying the whole podcast, that's a bit spooky.
I tried that. And it was eerie, honestly, to hear your own voice being cloned. But also, like you said, I don't think I can use that, in the long run, because it takes away from the real human connection, right? That's what we want more of. Like, I think people are trying to take away the human out of everything. And I feel like at this point in time, we just need more of humanity in everything. And let's not, make it. And also, we don't want to become so technologically dependent when it comes to in our businesses that we forget how to just talk right? Like that's what where we are headed to. Like we forget to talk because we have cloned voices now.
The whole reason that podcasts are so powerful is because you're getting directly into people's ears while they're doing the cooking or driving the car or whatever, and they feel a connection to you, and they have this parasocial relationship with you. And so, yeah, it's very personal. It's one-to-one communication, one person at a time. And so, yeah, I don't think AI can replicate that. Wouldn't want it to, that's for sure. Actually, I want to also mention another thing that people might forget about podcasting that I think is, aside from the marketing side of things, is that connection not only with the people listening, but the fact that it's kind of a networking tool. So you can use it as an excuse to meet anyone that you've ever hoped to meet. It kind of gives you a platform and a value that you can offer them. And when I first started podcasting, aside from the podcast itself and serving the audience, a lot of what I got out of it was meeting people, and then them knowing I did speaking, and then them inviting me to do workshops and stuff because of this sort of image and association, and this way of actually having a chat with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the honestly overlooked aspects of podcasting is the community that you're able to build, not just with your listeners, but with the kind of guests that you get on your podcast and how they contribute to the overall conversation and the overall theme of your podcast. I think that is something that we should also think about and be mindful of when we are creating a podcasting strategy. I know this might be a tough question for you, but still I'm going to ask it. Do you think there is anyone who should not start a podcast? Like any kind of entrepreneur that you would say, no, you shouldn't start a podcast?
That's a good question. Who shouldn't start a podcast? I don't think I can answer that for someone else. I don't think you should start one because you think you should. I think you should start one because you want to, because you think it would be fun, because you have a calling, because it's a thing that you have always had sort of nagging you at the back of your mind. I should. But if you're thinking, and the reason you don't want to do it is because you're just scared it will be too hard or this or that, then have a go. No, you only live once. Just have a red hot go at least. But if it's something you're doing because you think you should, but you've got no other motivation, then don't. Find what, you might want to just appear on TikTok every day or go nuts on Threads. Or I do strongly believe in following your own inner calling and going all in, and just be fully present with whatever feels like your calling and your path.
Yeah, definitely don't do it because you think that's what works for other big name entrepreneurs, or that's how people are getting more clients and making more money, right? Do it if you genuinely feel like you can get up on podcast and talk about what you love every single week, or whatever your frequency might be. That is definitely important. Lastly, I want to ask you, what are your 3 favorite podcasts from a podcaster's point of view, like from someone who supports podcasts? And you don't have to name mine. I'm, liberating you from that expectation completely.
Okay. Besides your wonderful podcast, because that's obvious. And I do genuinely love your message. I love how you share things in such a refreshing way with authenticity. So I do love that. And I think that's what I admire in podcasts. So the other one, I've got a client, Anna Hasty. So she's got the Alchemy Mindset podcast. And one thing I love about hers, for example, is that she's honest about sometimes saying things that are less than perfect, as far as she's very inspiring too, but she's very relatable. So she'll say, I have to say this, and I've been wanting to talk about this issue for a while, but I've had this block that I won't be able to express it very well, so bear with me. And then she gets into it, and it's all very endearing. I like Jenna Kutcher. I listen to her, and she doesn't do I've been saying, it's a big trend to do video and you can do so much with it, but she doesn't. So that's an example of someone who succeeds without doing that. I like a Mamma Mia podcast for a bit of Mamma Mia out loud, for a bit of mindless chat about what's going on in the world. I don't know. I feel like I want to mention all my clients, and then I'll leave people out. Caroline Ellen has the Safer, Stronger Kids podcast. So anyone who wants a bit of inspiration, she so highly impacts me in my parenting. And I'll play snippets of things that she said to my kids to go, see, this is why. This is why of limited screen time. See, hear this bit? So anyway, it depends what I think it's people who basically are authentic. And I think that's why I love podcasting, because it tends to attract people who are doing something from a place of authenticity and doing something they love and care about.
Absolutely. Before we go, and thank you so much for everything that you have shared today and all the podcasting gems that you have dropped today. Where can people find more about you if they want to work with you, if they want to start their own podcast? Of course, we're going to, put all of your links in the description box. But what's the easiest and the quickest way to reach out to you?
Well, you can just go to my website and find everything else there, I guess. So livvimusicmedia.com. So LIVVI musicmedia.com. And then you can find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and everywhere else.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much, Livvi. And we are excited to have you this time, but I'm sure we'll have you soon when there are more things in the podcasting world. And I need to get a sort of new surge of inspiration for my own podcast. We're going to have you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Been a pleasure.
That's the episode for today. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I am thrilled to have you as part of the Brave Marketing community. Because this podcast is still brand new, it would mean so much to me if you could leave a 5-star review, as that will make it easy for other brave hearts to find this podcast and grow our community of rule breakers. Until next time, have a brave week ahead.